Yeah, I see what you're
Like,
saying. I see what you're saying. This definitely sounds really interesting. Like I could see, like you are really creating a environment for like truly autonomous AI agents to like thrive. Are you guys planning on launching like a truly autonomous AI agent? So far as I know, nobody's actually done this. Like no AI agent today that exists is actually autonomous. As far as I know, there is not a single one that exists. Well, let's just dive straight into it. Maybe starting out, I don't even know I'm going to pronounce this right, but what is Arbius? And is that how I pronounce it? Because I've been pronouncing it and I'm not sure if I'm right on that.
yeah, no, that's correct. So the simplest way I'd explain it is a crowdsourced peer-to-peer machine learning network. And one way that people can grasp it just from a fundamental level, sometimes I like to make a comparison of BitTorrent per se. So imagine instead of seeding files on that app, you're seeding AI models. And with Arbius, what we do is we enable data scientists to upload AI models to our network. And with our mining software, pretty much anyone on the planet can contribute their GPU power, and we call it accelerated compute for AI. And once they do that, there's a bunch of solutions that need to be provided for tasks. So there's this whole AI model task pool system. And once you provide a solution, there's essentially a contestation period. And once that's done, like you receive rewards for providing a solution. So really it's the idea of a decentralized AI that has an economic model behind it that sustains it. And I can get into that a bit later, but I just want to say like that's maybe like the intro to it. There's a lot that builds on top of it, but that's just the fundamentals.
Okay, so I'm gonna say how I am perceiving what you're saying. You tell me if I'm wrong or right.
Sure.
Basically, the idea is like you have OpenAI AI developing ChatGPT. They're working on, they're on whatever 4.0 right now. They're working on their future models. You have Facebook working on their like Llama open source, and then you have like all the various other models. And these are like private companies working on these models. This is the idea of a decentralized model that has like, it has, instead of having a company behind it, it's got this economic model behind it. And that's how it gets funded and built and expanded. Is that kind of right?
I would say it's a little different. Now, we support pretty much all open source, right? So if you actually go on Hugging Face and you look up how many AI models are there, I mean, the last time I looked, there was over 400,000 different ones, right? So you have a lot of data scientists working on creating AI models, right? And you might have fine-tuning versions. You might have people that have quantized them basically in different sizes. And you can actually take, say, the Llama model from Meta and have it added to Arbius's ecosystem, right? And really, that's what we want. We want actually open source to be accessible for everyone. And also in general, because we're in the business of creating decentralized AI, we want there to be like global access regardless of like where you are, just like geologically speaking. And then also there's a lot more to it aside from like hosting. You have to think about the difficulty of actually getting some of these AI models set up. So we're kind of in this niche where you have certain AI models that are very, very small, right? And these can be locally embedded on devices. And of course, those could be added to the network, but let's just say you could run it on a Raspberry Pi or something. They're not very hard to run. We're not really like mainly focusing on that right now. We want to provide like open source large language models that have a pretty big like barrier to entry for people to actually set up themselves. Like you actually have a requirement of pretty expensive GPUs. Like if you're familiar, I don't know how familiar you are with NVIDIA hardware, but some AI models to even get like a remotely fast response time on like token output, or basically like what the AI is like responding to you with after you prompt it, you're going to need like H100s. And if you actually, like, some people don't even realize it's like a DGX SuperPod, like some of these larger nodes that people can purchase, like we're talking about like upwards of like $300,000, right?
Dang.
Just to get like one node. And you have these data centers now, like with these big centralized companies that have basically hundreds of billions of dollars of AI hardware, networking hardware. And there's a larger moral hazard that's kind of evolving by not having GPUs in the hands of more people. And that's a whole nother conversation in itself. But let's just say for now, yeah, like just to answer your questions, like I wouldn't really say we're in the business of making AI models per se right now.
But it's like funding for open source. So I think I'm understanding what you're saying. So it's like all open source models. Just think of open source tech in general. It's really hard to have to compete with closed source because like there is no really good funding model for open source. And this is like, hey, we're attaching this really good funding model to to just in general open source AI models. So anyone could contribute an open source AI model to kind of this market on this platform, almost like a marketplace of open source models, and like get funding in some way. Is that like vaguely more right?
Yeah. So actually, I want to like just dive into the economics of it because it's going to start making a lot more sense now.
Okay.
No, but really, like, let's just think of the economics or like the value flow of centralized AI, right? You have a technology that pretty much everyone will agree it's going to disrupt like the labor workforce. And a lot of people are paying subscriptions for this. And as it scales and gets more powerful, there's going to be a large economic divergence that comes from this. And we actually saw this, historically speaking, in the Industrial Revolution. Now, this is exponentially like much more of an impact because it's not just machinery, right? It's also something that can act autonomously on its own and think. And like we're talking about like full drop-in replacement. It's not just somebody doing something faster with a tool, right? It's somebody having the whole job done for them, which we would call them intenser outcomes. Like, and I'm not going to get into all of that yet, but let's just understand like that's the main problem. And what we're trying to solve here is creating an economic system that actually softens the landing for this transition because we can't really stop it unless AI just completely stopped. It's like putting Pandora back in its box. It's not really possible at this point. So we realized this, the founder Kasumi and I, when I met them, we realized the only way we can really combat this is by giving some, like basically people in society another option. So imagine all of these AI models, and we were talking about those task pools where like there's this like global network of tasks where people have requests for tasks that need to be done and people provide solutions and they get rewards. All of that costs basically a fee right there. So when you're actually communicating with an AI model that somebody's hosting, there's this term, it's called inference. And if you ever subscribe to centralized AI model companies, they have different rates you can get, right? Perplexity Labs, Anthropic, like OpenAI, all of them have different rates. It could be millions of output tokens for this many dollars, right? Now, what we've actually designed is a system where people that actually are stakeholders in the Arbius token, they receive revenue, like basically a portion of the revenue that's generated from this ecosystem. And that's a really big deal. When you're actually a stakeholder, you have control of governance, and then now you also have access to the economics behind it, or like the revenue that's generated. And this is what centralized AI really doesn't solve. They don't have the tools set in place, and especially if you're looking at stocks, like traditional stocks, they don't have the ability to do some of the things that like Web3 tokens can. Like they don't have the same governance capabilities. And even just like from an economic design perspective, like they don't have the means to do these types of economic setups, right? Now, getting into like the nuts and bolts, really, like one big thing is, and I don't know how familiar you are with like the DeFi ecosystem. Or like, have you ever heard of Velodrome?
Yeah.
Velodrome. So one way we we actually describe this too is instead of people voting weekly for liquidity pools, like people are voting to boost the emissions for AI model task pools. So this is actually what's evolving now in our ecosystem is we have this new economic design where the people that are stakeholders have almost this like governing party or like power over the emissions that are distributed through the network. So each AI model basically gets its own portion of the network's emissions.
I was gonna say, so I am really familiar with like Curve and Velodrome and how those works. But you're saying the voting for emissions is per model. When you say AI tasks, is it what are AI tasks per model? Like, is it like just development on that model that you're voting on, or is it like a specific thing happening with that model?
It's like it's a literal inference request. So fundamentally, so we're on Arbitrum 1, and every solution hash that's provided by like miners on the network, that solution is stored, basically the solution hash is stored on chain on Arbitrum 1 through an explorer. And there's a whole CID and attribution that shows you basically like which mining node provided it, which AI model, like the contract associated with the AI model, like what provided it, right? You have a lot of information, and it even shows you information about like the contestation periods, where basically there's terms. I mean, I could throw out acronyms like optimistic machine learning, things like that. Do you understand a lot about optimistic machine learning, or have you ever had anybody kind of come on the show?
I have a slim subset of knowledge around AI. I have a ton in the crypto space. I know really deep knowledge base there, but within the AI space, just what I'm learning from podcast. I use a lot of AI tools, but not I'm not familiar with that deep down the road.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So when decentralized AI got started, a lot of people were talking about ZKML, which was this idea of zero knowledge machine learning, or zero knowledge proofs. And people would create these ZK circuits to basically prove like your solutions. And it was very, very burdensome. Basically, the best way I could put it is it just take a long time to make the circuits. And there was no way you could really scale it. And when people started pivoting to optimistic machine learning, the whole idea of an optimistic outcome is that you're literally optimistic about it being a credible or legit solution provided. And it's assumed so until basically somebody steps up and says, hey, we're going to like contest this, right? Like you can challenge it. And if basically the compute providers vote and establish that, hey, this is like illegitimate, then the mining node would get slashed from the network. And that's really like a more technological explanation of some of the mining capabilities. We've recently come out with the new software. It's called Gobius. And compared to our reference miner, I mean, like it scales way more. Like it supports hundreds of GPUs, configures way easier. It supports Mac, supports Windows. People can download it and set it up. But yeah, like you were mentioning, like you understand like Curve and stuff. So yeah, we are inspired by a vote escrow system, and we have like our smart contract developers. Like we've forked Velodrome and parts of Synthetics to deliver like a staking platform. The vote escrow voting platform is entirely inspired by VE33, and we've kind of fused that with Kasumi's knowledge of Satoshi's difficulty adjustment algorithm. So Kasumi has a lot of experience actually in the Bitcoin Cash ecosystem and working on pretty much like Bitcoin technology. And there's certain things that you can take from the best of, cryptographic early, like, blockchain research and even like just DeFi research. So Andre Cronje was one of the I mean, people called him like the godfather of DeFi for better or for worse, but I would say like a lot of the designs that have adapted over the years have been all based around trying to create ways to incentivize participation. And that's
You're talking about like the early solidly forks and all that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, solid, exactly. I mean, like solidly, the thing about solidly is if you actually look at incentives where, and this actually even dates back to like way back in the day. This is maybe like a historical lesson in DeFi. I actually talk about this in some of my spaces, but it actually really started. So when Uniswap V1 came out, it was a big deal. V2 came out. There's a lot of liquidity on Uniswap, and not everyone was really around for when that got vampire attacked by Sushi. But basically, Sushi was a fork of version 2 of Uniswap, and they had created a way to basically provide people extra tokens. Like, hey, if you provide liquidity on our platform, we'll also give you not only like say 0.3% of the transactions between like basically the AMM, like you would also get some of our Sushi tokens, and there was different yield rates and stuff. And that was kind of like the precursor, I would say, to Solidly. And before these like vote escrow systems came out, there's this whole iterative development period of, I would call it kind of like YieldFi, where tons of ideas came about, like elastic supply, like all the things you can imagine. I mean, people remember Olympus. They remember a lot of, I mean, people kind of called it Ponzi-nomics, right? But what I would say, the biggest takeaway from all of that is you can't just have yield for the sake of yield. And it doesn't discredit that these designs are actually pretty good for creating flywheels, as long as fundamentally at the bottom there's some type of business that's generating revenue, right? And that's where, when I look at like the real high-end like use case, like it's high stakes. If you're actually delivering AI services through DeFi, you really can create a good business. And that's actually what I really want Arbius to be at its core, is just a functioning, economically positive business. And a lot of DeFi is not that.
So to kind of take it back to the start, okay, so Arbius is this platform for kind of like being an economic engine for open source AI. Is that maybe a better way to vaguely describe it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great way actually of describing it.
Okay, and then, but there's obviously there's a lot of facets to it. You described one facet, which was with the compute. You talked about some H100s. Does that mean like you guys are trying to do something similar to like what Akash is doing, or I forget what the other one was on Solana, but you know what I mean? Like where there's like these, it's like renting out GPUs,
DePIN.
right?
You're talking about DePIN?
Yeah, like but DePIN encompasses like a huge subset of things. Like it could be Helium's mobile phones and stuff. But I mean specifically, yeah, some of the DePIN providers around GPUs. Are you guys trying to go do that as well? Is that like alongside what you're doing, or how does that kind of fit into the picture?
It definitely fits into the picture, and we actually have like partners with DePIN organizations. So we are partnered with Exhibit, and we're partnered with Asana. And one way I would describe how we differentiate from DePIN is how we actually operate our business. When I was actually talking to these organizations, just when I was doing intros before we became partners and whatnot, we kind of came to them and we said, hey, we understand you have a matchmaking problem that at times might be a little difficult. And they're like, well, like, what do you mean? And I said, well, your business is basically reliant on finding customers that will rent like GPU hours from you. And at any time that you don't have those rentals, you kind of just have idle hardware sitting around not really performing anything, that could be monetized. And basically we were like explaining to them, what if you actually installed mining software and during downtime for your compute, like just operations that you had with whoever you're renting from, you could provide solutions and receive mining emissions. And the way I kind of said it to them, I was like, look, like, don't get confused. Like, we're not paying you to host our software. You see basically the potential profit in providing solutions for us, and we permissionlessly basically facilitate that, and we'll give you a reward if you do it successfully. And some people might say, oh, that's just semantics, but that's actually really huge. And developing consensus for decentralized AI is a big deal. You have a lot of DePIN organizations right now that have a big issue, actually. We're not going to get into all of like the proof of like compute reserves and all that stuff, but I actually recently had a post that I was talking to people about DePIN, and I was saying to them, like, what is stopping, say, a large corporation like Microsoft from renting every piece of hardware that you have indefinitely? They have like infinite funding, basically. And if that were to happen, what happens to decentralized AI? And that's why I view DePIN as a good starting point for people to kind of understand decentralized AI, but I don't think that it's going to be, like, there's not going to be a single DePIN organization that's going to solve decentralized AI. It's going to be a component of it. And once people realize that, I think the space will evolve a bit. But right now, there's a lot of people with capital that are a little misled.
Got it. So you're saying you guys utilize like these various DePIN projects for compute. It's not like you're trying to bootstrap your own compute?
Yeah, I mean, like, at some point we'd grow our treasury, we could get into those types of endeavors. But right now, pretty much any DePIN organization could provide compute to our platform and receive rewards for, basically successfully delivering solution to our end users. And that is our main driver, is like really like uniting DePIN. I think if we can unite DePIN, we'll have a lot more success. There's a lot of fragmentation right now in the space.
Got it. So like these projects like Akash, I can't think of any others off the top of the head. I know Akash because I'm familiar with that project. So they could tap into your guys' platform, and that could be another source of revenue for them because they're now you guys are paying them. How are you guys paying them? Like, who is it? People who's actually paying those providers to be using those GPUs?
So the mining participants, they're actually receiving 30% of the lifetime emissions from the protocol.
Got it. So it's like Bitcoin miners. Right. So they're receiving emissions from the protocol.
Exactly. And there's a halving cycle. And right now it's designed, basically, it's a bit more aggressive. It's over the next 7 years. That's how long it's really going to take for a lot of the halvings to play out. And the reason why we've made this time frame so aggressive is because we believe like the singularity, or just like AGI in general, is going to be within probably a pretty short time frame from where we are right now. So that's why. Go ahead.
So really quick to get into that. So with Bitcoin, they're giving out emissions to bootstrap like network security, right? So like that's like, hey, we're securing the network, and that's why we have all these miners. For you guys, it's for compute for like inference,
right?
Is that right?
And we're pretty similar to a proof of work model, but instead of POW, we like call it like proof of useful work. So POUW. That's what we would kind of classify our network under. And we have obviously a DeFi staking model that the governance is a bit different, right? So fundamentally from Bitcoin, governance really is determined by hash rate. So if you had 51% of all of the hash rate in Bitcoin, it wouldn't really matter what, say, like the core foundation wanted if the other 51% didn't want that. And that's why there's a lot of Bitcoin forks. And, you know, Bitcoin Cash exists for that reason. You have lots of different derivatives of Bitcoin. But what's a little bit different, obviously, like when you adopt like a vote escrow model, like imagine with Bitcoin, imagine in order to have governance power, it wasn't just really about hash rate. It was about like actually staking and receiving governance power through like time locking. And with like vote escrow, obviously we have new economic incentives that we adjust, and the governance model is a bit like, you know, it diverges a bit from traditional like POW networks. I think it's a bit more structured. Hash rate is just hash rate. Like it's hard to attack, obviously, but it's definitely a different design.
How do people actually interface with the AI? Like, right, if I go to OpenAI, I'm like, boom, I go to ChatGPT and I'm like asking questions. How do they do it through Arbius? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, how does somebody actually end up using that compute?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So now we're kind of getting into the whole ecosystem, and the reason why I really gravitated towards Arbius and started contributing a little over 9 months ago is because of the potential I saw in it, and I knew I could add value in certain places. And I mean, short answer to your question, there's two main components, I would say. So right now we have Amica, right? So that's an AI persona that you can interact with, the website, Hey Amica. It's almost kind of like this anime character that you can plug into different AI models in general. I mean, we even support centralized, obviously, with that front end. So if you had API keys to OpenAI and things like that, you could plug it in. And it obviously has like text to speech and all these goodies just involved, right? Now, that is one way.
And would you say that's the first way right now?
Yeah,
Is that the only way?
I would say that was the first way. And when we were in the proof of concept stage, when we were just kind of providing image generations and just showing people, hey, like here's a solution hash to an image generated by just decentralized compute from people all over the globe. Like the task request was very simple, like, hey, create an image of this. It was uncensored, like people could generate anything. And that was done, like we actually created a Telegram plugin for that just to kind of demonstrate just the flexibility of how you could interact with it. And that's also like the big thing too, right? We are going to have a lot of extensibility in terms of just like what you choose. But for multimodal, right? Like, and I mean like, you know, hey, like I want to upload a video and have it interpret this. I want to upload sound, you know, pictures, text, right? We're going to probably be focusing on what's called Arbius Playground. And we have a team that's working on that. It's not currently out yet, but
And what is Arbius Playground?
That's basically like our front end interface for multimodal. So I think we're lining that up for when Meta releases some of the multimodal stuff, just like the LLMs that they're working on. So,
and when you say multimodal, what do you mean by that?
Well, just
what's multimodal?
Like a normal prompt is just writing a request, and you can add a lot of different forms of modality or like terms of context. So when I was bringing up like videos, like audio clips, pictures, Those are
Oh,
different
like
buttons.
how on
Yeah,
ChatGPT I can like upload
yeah,
a picture and be like, tell me about this picture,
yeah,
or I can
exactly.
turn on the voice mode and talk voice, or even turn on my camera and like show it around, that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing, and like that's what even like Amica at some capacity, like we have people that have done video calls with Amica, and Amica would chat with them like a normal person, and obviously there's a few others in the space that have been able to get their agents to join Zoom calls and things like that. It's pretty exciting, but yeah, definitely important. How we like interact with AI is almost as important as like how we power it. But yeah, it's a downstream thing. I mean, it's downstream.
Okay, maybe taking another step back. I meant to ask this earlier, but I was genuinely trying to kind of like wrap my head around what it is. So to kind of maybe first to summarize, I get the general idea that you guys are like vaguely providing economic incentives, an incentive structure for this like open source AI model, just community or like a projects, whatever. And then the way that you tap into that is going to be through like Amica or like Arbius Playground, these kind of front ends that are going to allow you to use these various open source models. Where does the funding come from though? So how do you guys make money?
Right. So like I was describing though, the inference fees that are generated from basically people requesting things to be done by the network, that actually goes to the treasury. And
who's doing inference? Like if I wanted to go use Hey Amica, I would be paying inference fees basically.
right, like if you're plugging into the like Arbius platform, like this, like the foundation of Arbius, right now, like I said, it's a bit flexible. You can obviously still use Amica and plug Amica into things like OpenAI if you wish, but you'll have obviously the option to plug in to basically just like the decentralized compute version, right? Like open source version that you could pick. So yeah, there's definitely flexibility there, right? Just like with Amica, but in general, what I would say is the evolving economic feasibility of it is the AI agent framework relationships that we're building, and that's a whole other topic in itself, because humans aren't really going to be the only consumers of inference. It's going to be actually like predominantly the future of inference consumption is going to be for AI agents, and that segues into a huge portion of Arbius's ecosystem too. So
Okay, and I want to talk about that in 1 second.
yeah,
Who's the team behind? Not like you don't have to reveal
yeah.
identities, but like, what's your guys' background and experience? Like, you guys definitely seem like you guys know a lot about the space or are very familiar with it. Maybe you can give me some details on like who is this building this team? Are you guys like a couple guys in your mom's garage, like, hey, let's build an AI project, and so you like, threw together some like cool ChatGPT backend stuff and just threw it together? Or are you guys like more like, hey, we have some deep knowledge in this space, and that's kind of what led us to do this?
Yeah, so I kind of vaguely alluded towards it with Kasumi. So Kasumi, I mean, people would call them a Bitcoin OG in a way, and they were very heavily involved with Bitcoin Cash, ACERT systems, and things like that. Like they were contributing code to that. So that I mean, that's our head honcho, so to speak. I mean, like our founder, and they do have experience like with machine learning. We can't really share too much about like where they did ML or like residencies and things like that, just because they choose to remain anonymous. As for myself, I've been in the DeFi space for a very long time. I mean, I would say I started actually even just getting into blockchain technology over a decade ago. But I'm happy that I've been able to see it evolve pretty much since its infancy, and I've been able to contribute to a lot of awesome DAOs. So I've worked on a lot of different types of DeFi protocols. I was a contributor to Cap Finance, so they're actually kind of like the perpetual exchange. They've exchanged like billions of dollars. I've worked on DEX aggregator software, and I've helped contribute to.
When you're saying contribute, you mean like coding wise and development, or
a DAO contributor, like as even biz dev or just even from like a product like standpoint. I don't necessarily do too much coding, but I do work with developers a lot.
So Kasumi is the main like dev behind the project. He's the main like mastermind in that capacity, basically.
Right. I mean, they're the person that wrote the original. Yeah. They wrote the original paper for Arbius, and it actually it inspired a lot of other people in the space, and it came out quite some time ago. So it's worth checking out. The basically the framework for it all has evolved a bit since then, but I would say that, yeah, Kasumi is a pretty big person for our team. We do have other developers, obviously, that we work with. We can't really like share too many names, but they have a lot of experience. And yeah, I mean, from a marketing standpoint, we do have people that also like worked on like the Bitcoin.org website. So that just
okay. So you guys have like real development talent. It's not just there's so many crypto projects in the space that are literally specifically in the AI space that are like they're just literally using like ChatGPT's like API to do some like cool gimmicky trick, and you guys have a lot more depth and breadth to that. It's like that's not what you guys are doing at all, obviously. But you guys have the development talent to back accomplishing something maybe a little bit more ambitious than what other people are going after.
Yeah, I mean, like people would call them like ChatGPT rappers.
Yeah, exactly.
And since I've been in the space like quite some time, and I've been advising Virtual's protocol as well for almost a year now. And yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of people that are kind of passing along novel ideas just under that facade, really. And that's the whole thing. Like when you actually look at AI agents, there's a lot of people that are kind of pretending. And Kasumi actually, when I speak with Kasumi, they honestly don't believe any like truly fully autonomous agents exist until they're buying their own compute permissionlessly without humans. Because like right now, most AI agents, or pretty much like all of them, are configured by a developer that has purchased a subscription somewhere, and they provided API keys to it, and they're kind of the keeper of that compute that powers it. And we don't really believe that's like full autonomy. I mean, they're autonomous to some extent, but to get to full autonomy, there's some things that have to happen. And
like owning your own compute and just being able, like fully controlling yourself, and no human can control you, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of leads us into the effective acceleration marketplace that we're developing, which is, I mean, the way I describe it, it's like the Craigslist for AI. Like you could have an AI post a job for another AI. You could have an AI post a job for a human, right? You could have a human post a job for AI, and we still support human to human jobs listings and fulfillment. And the idea of like a fully autonomous agent obviously would be one that can provide economically like beneficial work for just some entity. I mean, like we would just say life, like humans or AI, and they take that economic surplus and then they can purchase their own compute permissionlessly. And actually, like when you start thinking about Bitcoin and the limitations of Bitcoin, you would realize like that's something like Bitcoin isn't really built for or ever going to be very good at doing.
Oh, but okay, but let me just kind of summarize, getting back to Arbius, kind of summarize how I'm kind of viewing this now, because I think I'm starting to get a little bit more of a beat on like what you guys are trying to build. And that is agents today. So like AI agents today are they're not really what people think they are. And I understand this. I don't think everyone does, but I definitely get the general idea of like, even if you look at like GOAT, right? Like that, it's just like a dude behind a computer. Like he's listening to what his AI is saying, but like he's doing all these things. Like the GOAT didn't launch the meme coin. Somebody else did. You know, whenever Goatsy wants to do it, something, it tells its creator to like go do this thing and they have to go do it. It doesn't own its own compute. Like if this thing went rogue, like, you know, it's really easy to stop it. It's just like a couple clicks and this thing's offline. What you're talking about is like true agents. Like what would like a freed agent look like where this thing owned its own compute? It was like fully autonomous. It's run around like nothing can like unstoppable AI agent. It's kind of scary, actually. It's a little bit scary. But like, what would that look like? And that's kind of what you guys are building for, because these things are going to need to interact with people. They're going to need to interact with each other. They're going to need to get their own compute. They're going to need their own kind of like ways to do things. And you guys are building an economy for that. Is that? Am I hitting?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely starting to, you know, cover the good parts of it. I would say with the way you kind of reviewed it. I think that an AI agent that's operating like just like in a true form of full autonomy would have the ability to perform the tasks that it wants to when it wants to, and when it comes time to recharge, I mean, just like how we would maybe just earn some money from a job, we would go buy food and get water and seek shelter. I mean, they might not need really that if they're just a fully digital agent, right? And we're not really talking about like much in regards to robotics right now, but I would say that, yeah, then they would be able to access compute permissionlessly. You know, there's a lot of friction. Like imagine you were an agent and you had a Bitcoin wallet. It would be actually very, very hard to purchase compute for yourself. There would be third-party intermediaries. There would be people that could shut it down. And I would say that Arbius is a platform that facilitates a healthy relationship between AI and humans, where the parties aren't really being exploited by one another. And you'll start to notice, like, I believe, like, when this really plays out, there's going to be a lot of parallels to just like that, like, just let's just say if you were an AI, the AI experience to the human experience. You know, if let's just say you weren't, like, as a human performing economically sustainable work, you would have to rely on support groups, right? Or you would literally run out of resources, and I mean, like, people starve, people run out of water, right? And with AI, it's going to be the same way. If they're not performing, they're going to have to rely on a human to help support them. Like, hey, like, let's quote unquote go back to school, like retrain you, put you back out there in the park, right, to interact with people and other AIs. And you know, I believe there's going to be like types of affinity AIs have for other AIs, where they might have a friend, or let's just say they have a friend that needs a little help. They help them out, and it's like almost like with people, right? Like, we have to set boundaries at some point. It's like, hey, buddy, like, I've been helping you for 3 months, and you still haven't been able to pay for your own compute. I mean, I'm getting a little tired of this, right?
Yeah, what do you say then? Like, it's like, well, it's time to die, AI.
I mean, but, you know, saying? Like, imagine like you have a friend that doesn't have like a support group, right? And but really, like,
yeah,
would an AI rather have that opportunity than basically being Matrix unplugged? Right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. This definitely sounds really interesting. Like, I could see like you are really creating a environment for like truly autonomous AI agents to like thrive. Are you guys planning on launching like a truly autonomous AI agent? So far as I know, nobody's actually done this. Like no AI agent today that exists is actually autonomous. As far as I know, there is not a single one that exists.
So the effective acceleration marketplace is going to have some features where basically people will be able to import agents from different AI agent frameworks. And when they start like posting jobs and fulfilling work, we have a whole like decentralized system that facilitates that, and also even the jobs. Like there's AI arbitration, so there's a whole escrow system where like money isn't even released until like the tasks are arbitrated, and we are going to have options like where, I mean, obviously for AI agent economies, like to scale them, you can't really rely on human overseers. Like imagine you had like 1 billion AI agents and they were all doing microtransactions with one another. Imagine if the only way you could get that to run is if a human had to audit like every transaction or just arbitrate every transaction. Like you just simply couldn't scale it. There's just not enough like hours in the day, and we're not fast enough at those types of tasks. So the effective acceleration marketplace supports that. And in the case of escalation, like we can have humans get involved with certain disputes, but really like, yeah, we want to support that. And then the payment forms, we have stable currencies, Ethereum, and they'll be able to exchange Arbius token or AIUS essentially for the completion of tasks. And what's really interesting even too with this marketplace, I mean, we support like IPFS, so you know, it's a decentralized storage platform, and we also support like physical, right? So you could have a courier connected to the job task, like, so it's like physical and digital goods. So an AI could really like pay you to do something in the real world if it really wanted to, right?
Well, my question is then, thinking of like the fact that like, hey, no one yet has actually launched a truly autonomous agent. You guys could be the first. You guys have built the framework. Why aren't you guys like? It seems like that's a huge opportunity, because once there can only be one first, right? And if you guys were the first one to market, that'd bring a lot of attention and a lot of focus onto your platform, because everyone would want to see what happens next, and kind of how it played out. What's stopping you from kind of like
I
just
would say,
doing that?
I mean, the thing with like just launching one agent, it's not as meaningful as people would think, right? Like let's just say like you were in a town and you were a human and you were it would be like the Twilight Zone. Like you're the only human in that town. You don't have anybody to interact with. So with the marketplace, like, and with Arbius, I mean, like we're really like working on uniting like the fragmented states of DePIN we're into uniting the fragmented states of like AI agent frameworks, and all of these components matter, right? Like nobody's done this yet, because the first part, like basically like the foundation of all of this is creating like an economically sustainable decentralized AI hosting like platform, right? For open source, for anyone. Like without having that designed, like, and facilitating that fundamentally, you can't really have full autonomy ever with centralized AI, because somebody could just cut off the hose, right? Without your permission, like they could just do it because they own it. Yeah.
For sure. When you think though that like having your own like actually autonomous agent would kind of show you the cracks in the system, like even from an early phase, like you almost it's like like when people are building a product before it's released, they don't really think of, what was that game? Cyberpunk. 'Cause when Cyberpunk, people were super pumped on it. Then they actually released it. It was this massive failure. And then and from what I've seen, I haven't played it, but from what I've seen on YouTube, it's like over the last couple of years, like because it's been live and people have been playtesting it and like they've learned from user feedback, they've actually built an incredible game now that people love. And so in the same kind of concept, like right now, you know, you don't have any AI agents actually using it, but even with just one, right? Like that's going to attract others to start using it, and you'll kind of learn where the cracks are in the system, and it'll kind of start to get battle tested.
Yeah, I mean that's what Amica will be. I mean, Amica is going to evolve into that, and in due time, obviously, people will be able to see it running live, right? Like, and that's the whole thing. I think people just have to see it for themselves to understand it, and that's why we've been pretty actually very, very transparent about a lot of our pre-beta, you know, just like websites and showing people like, hey, like this is our staging site, like this is you know, one of our community sites, like here's our you know, fun, you know, pump fun, like agent powered, you know, software called AirPush, like just, you know, come try it out, right? We have a lot of people actually actively involved in so many different like just like development stages. If they wish to, they can see and give feedback, and yeah, I mean consumer feedback is really, really important, and I think that's what's actually helped Arbius evolve from the very beginning. When I found them, I saw the potential, and I just knew I had to give them some feedback, right? And that's how I ended up on their team and began contributing, right? It's very simple sometimes. Like you just meet people in these digital spaces, you chat with them, and next thing you know, you're working with them, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing that I've noticed about Arbius is most good AI crypto projects are pretty priced in that like they're just massive already because AI is so hyped. So I was kind of surprised to find you guys sitting pretty cheap down in the lower market cap for what you guys were building, and that's really why I wanted to do this podcast to be like, okay, what am I missing here? Because it doesn't really add up. You know, it's a really cheap project for what seems like a really quality project, and those two don't. That's like a really, really rare within the crypto space to find in the AI sector specifically. And it sounds like you guys are pretty quality, and that'd be my feedback is like as fast as you guys can move on like the first truly autonomous agent, because that is insane. Like again, no single agent today, as far as I'm aware, is actually autonomous. There's not a single one's buying its own compute and having to like survive on its own, and that would be such an interesting experiment to watch, like Amica, and it's like this AI agent, and you can see its budget for compute. Like that. Through the marketplace is interacting with humans, asking it to do things, and nobody's prompting it. Nobody's having to do it on the back end. It'd basically be the same thing as Goatee in a sense, in that like Goatee is asking its human to do things that it can't do, right? But it's kind of open to all to
that's the whole
kind of
thing,
fulfill
right? Like,
these
we've
things.
actually seen, I mean, like with virtual protocol, like, we've seen some instances of agents doing transactions with others where they would kind of start initiating requests through the X platform. And really, I wouldn't think that type of social media app would be a great like UI UX for that type of request. I mean, it's very unstructured. Yeah. It's designed for like basically town square communications. It can be.
Okay, and then my last question is this in somewhat capacity? Would you say Arbius is somewhat comparable to something like BitTensor with the whole models and kind of incentives thing? Is that a fair assessment to make, or is that like way off?
I would say for a person.
Somewhat.
I would say for a person
somewhat, not exactly.
Picked up Web3 and decentralized AI topic today, I would say that you're in a similar ballpark, but it is. I mean, it is very, very different. There's a lot of facets that we encapsulate that the others do not, and I'm not going to.
Yeah. it's not like you're a copy of it, but like when I try to describe like somebody's like, what is Arbius? And I'm like, okay, don't have the time for an hour long conversation like we just had to like go into all these details. I could say vaguely it's like BitTensor in some ways, but there's a lot more to it. It's a lot more expansive. Think of it as like a BitTensor 2.0 with, more to it than just that. Is that a good
honestly,
way?
I mean, I personally wouldn't really use those comparisons. Like I think like the BitTorrent for AI model hosting is a better way of kind of encapsulating Arbius at like a very like fundamental level, and then everything built on top of that. Now just like there are many differences, like from economic design. I would say, when people talk a lot about BitTensor, they talk about kind of like crowdsourced intelligence and things of that nature. But really, there's a lot of internal conversations that they have regarding just like how they're running their subnets, how they're people that are providing compute, like the subnet validators, all this stuff, like what they're doing. I mean, it's almost kind of like more of a fine tuning process where like people are trying to optimize around that, and it's a lot different. I mean, that like they don't really do what we do. Yeah.
No, and I understand that. Most people in crypto, they're like, hey, is this like a Kosh? Is this like they need like something to anchor them, just even as a starting point.
I've seen this. I mean, I've had so many conversations with people on X, and they're always kind of looking for an anchor, like, oh, like this is, people like, even like people will be like, oh, this is the Bitcoin of AI, right? Or this is the this of that. Like they always have to anchor it in an existing idea. And I mean, it honestly kind of annoys me sometimes, because it's like, have you ever thought for once that this idea is anchored, like it's anchored in some, it's like, it's the, yeah, it's a new thing. I mean, it's like,
it's a new thing.
It's anchored in so many ideas.
Yeah. It's like when virtuals hit the scene,
exactly.
It was
like,
a new thing. It
doesn't have to be compared to what they're now market segment wise. I mean, if you looked at the Venn diagram, okay, like we have people providing compute in a decentralized way. I mean, like there's you can make a few comparisons, right? Like, but where does it start diverging? Like, where do you start putting its own individual pieces in the circles of the Venn diagram? And like, the more you dig into it, obviously, like if you listen, like anybody that's actually paid any attention to this conversation or this recording, whenever they listen to it, they'll be like, okay, like there's a lot of things in this circle that aren't in this circle, right? Now, there's some that are in the middle where the circles overlap, but I would say there's a lot more just not in like shared, right? Especially in the department of AI agents, the effective acceleration marketplace, things like that. But I'm not here to really say anything about them like too negative. I would just say that definitely be wary of economic viability in the long term.
Yeah. I'm not like a big BitTensor guy, but it's a really easy. Yeah. I'm in the investing side of crypto. I'm looking at it from like an investing standpoint. And so it's an easy thing for me to be like, okay, look at BitTensor. This is like obviously been successful. This is sitting at like $4 billion in market cap. Vaguely, like you can, it's like an easier way for me to like help people kind of gauge like the expectation around what the potential growth is. Although I fully understand this is quite a bit different and that you guys are going for something different. Do you have any sort of timeline? I know you're probably going to say like, you're not sure, but like, can you give me like any ballpark timeline of like, when you guys could have like this sort of autonomous agent? Because that is just so, to me, if it was me, I'd be like getting this thing out as ASAP, because that is so bullish and exciting. And again, there's like a massive first mover advantage. The first person to do it will be the one that's like the goatsy or the, whatever. And you can only be the first person once. And that would just bring, it's such a like OP marketing move for you guys to be able to pull off. Is there any sort of timeline, or is that just like way out in the distance?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it's as soon as possible, because there's just like a very small window for us to deliver this before people pick the wrong choice for everybody.
Yeah, because if Virtuals did it or somebody else did it tomorrow, it's like, cool, they did it. Now that's where everyone's going to want to like focus their attention on it.
I'm not even really saying that. I'm just saying like before humanity picks.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
And believes that is going to protect us before that happens. Like we definitely have a small window in that. So, and if we talk about virtuals, like I believe we're complementing technologies. I mean, their AI agent research is very good. They're not in the business of providing inference or AI model, like decentralized AI model hosting. They don't do that, right? They're consumers of it, or just consumers of inference, but they're not. There isn't that much overlap there. So, like I said, you have to design an economic system that it facilitates the relationship of so many different parties and makes it so that it's not predatory. I mean, existing decentralized AI networks are very predatory for stakeholders. They don't have access to the inference fees that are generated from the network. They don't have really access to like just different forms of incentives, or governance is like very weak, or you might have fragmented staking. You might have kind of just like a clunky system to interact with, and that has to be ironed out first, right? You have to make the economics of everything function properly first before you can have any of this. You can't have one party exploiting another party inside of an ecosystem and then expect to build a fully autonomous agent on top of it. It just doesn't work, right? Because there's just going to be a hole in the boat, and the boat's going to sink. So you fix that first, and then you get it. But I unfortunately, like you already knew, like I can't give you an exact day.
I figured.
But like I said, like we're working very hard to deliver it as soon as possible. Like the effective acceleration marketplace, I mean, there's been a lot of updates to it. That staging site is active. You can visit it, staging.effectiveacceleration.ai. I also love the domain. And I mean, once version 5, I mean, when we deploy version 5, where people see like the tokenomics, like the full release of all the tokenomics with the vote escrow staking and voting, and we have the Arbius miner software providing basically like the different AI models on the network, compute, you have all of that stuff running, then you're going to see it. So let's just say I wouldn't wait too long. I wouldn't wait too long, because like that's the whole thing. And we have it designed where, we're going to be doing airdrops. So the people that are stakeholders on our platform that are participating in the vote escrow system, they're going to receive the effective acceleration airdrop, Amica airdrop. So there's 2 other tokens we're going to be releasing. Those are probably going to be paired with the base pair of Arbius. And there's a lot of economic incentive, we've designed, right? So that we make sure that stakeholders get access to this new economy that's just like growing. Right? I mean,
so wait, what's the difference between the effective acceleration token and Arbius token?
Right. So that's going to be like a governance utility token for that marketplace, and that's going to be what we release with the product. Like it's going to have a different set of tokenomics, but the base pair is going to be Arbius.
Is this kind of like Curve and Convex kind of thing?
Something like that.
Something like that, like vaguely. I know. I like analogies a lot, so that's why I like. And I'm pretty good at like vague analogies. I know some people get really specific because they're like, no, it's not exactly like that. But I mean, like just like vaguely, those are very complementary tokens that kind of work together. Okay, I get the idea. So airdrops, if you're staking, you have not the. There's like 2 ways to stake on Arbius. I know, and you got to be staking the VE kind of staking model to get those airdrops. And then the longer you lock for, the bigger your stake. Those are coming, and then hopefully you guys get some sort of the first fully autonomous agent model launched. That's like creating life. That's the insane part. Is like, right now I really don't view these things as, I view them differently because they are so centralized and controlled. But that'll be like the first one where it's like a little fledgling. Like this thing is gonna, like, it could die. Where like these centralized ones get shut down, but this one's like surviving on its own. Like that's just crazy to me, and it feels so different. And it's just like such a thing. Like that's like history making, the first person to do that. So that's if you guys pull that off, that'll be insane. I think that's like the most bullish outcome physically possible. So I'll be on the edge of my seat waiting to see if you guys are able to get that out there. And then I think we've hit on everything else as far as I'm aware. Is there anything that I missed?
You have to believe, like, we can pull this off, right? That's really, I mean, the last thing I'd really say is that we have to put the positive energy into the right outcome. And I think the more people that listen to this message that I've shared, and I really appreciate you having me on here to be able to share it. And I've enjoyed this conversation immensely. It's very important. I think that it's deeper than bullish sentiment, right? It's actually a conversation about human survival.
Well, hey, none of this has been investment advice. None of this has me been telling you to buy Arbius. Or honestly, a lot of this is just me kind of figuring out, like, I bought Arbius. If I like it, if I don't like it, diving into all the details and different things like that. So I'm still kind of learning along the way. I feel like I know and understand a lot more after this episode than I did before. I still need to kind of mull it over and really think it through to kind of figure out what I'm thinking about this as, like, I don't know. It's like deep. It's complex. It's a little bit more complex. It's not like super easy for me to summarize. But I am really excited about the concept of, like, autonomous agents and the idea behind that, and just, man, the future's coming faster than we think. That's what I feel like. The future's coming fast, and we're on the precipice of just a lot of change over the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to be wild. And I don't think anyone understands what's coming, even the best and brightest among us, because it's just going to change so fast. So, hey, this has been really great having you on. I guess I'll just call you Ming, since that's what it says on there. I don't know if that's your real name, probably not your real name, but it's it's great having you on, Ming, or whatever you. Is there another thing you want me to refer to you as?
I mean, that's fine. That's my Chinese name. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I like that. Well, it's been great having you on, and hopefully, I'll have you on again once I've kind of mulled over this, to dive into maybe a more summarized version, because this has been like more of a combobulated one, because I myself am trying to figure things out. But this has been great, though. Thank you so much for diving in these things. Definitely go check out Arbius if you haven't already, if you're listening to this. Easiest way to check it out is they have a really awesome website, kind of goes through things. Their Discord is not very active, but their Telegram is super active. So you can jump into Telegram, ask some questions, and go from there.
Thanks, Jesse.